In conversation with Nicholas Mays. Nicholas Mays is an author and guest lecturer born and raised in Flint, Michigan, excelled in education with a master's in fine art, creative writing. Mays is starting to build his own library of literature. With a love for writing versus a specific genre, Mays has accomplished both fiction and nonfiction. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have for the show today Nicholas Mays and Cindy Breck for hosting me in the conversation. Welcome on the show, Nicholas. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's lovely to have you on the show today.
Yes.
Hi, Nicholas. It's nice to meet you.
Yes. Great to miss you.
Thank you so much. So, Nicholas, I must first say that I am taken aback by the description page of your book by invitation only, which sounds to me like it's quite uncommon to have a book in that title name. Yeah, I find it to be quite amazing and really interesting, and I'd like you to tell us how it came to be. What led you to write the book? What is it about? If you can run us to the foundation of it, that'll be nice.
This book, invitation only, is really unique in itself. If I were to give you the background to it, this is a book that was actually the title itself was given to me, and I say it was spirit led because it
Mm.
was given. The title was given to me from a person I had befriended a decade ago. We used to work together, and I was currently working on a book prior to it called Chosen, and this is another Christian literature I had written. And as I was working on that book, she had reached out to me, and she wanted me to contact her. This was on a Sunday afternoon, and it was so amazing because, and just to show how unique God was in getting this together, is that he had her contact me, somebody I rarely speak to. And to show how we didn't speak often, is that when she sent me the message, she sent it through Facebook Messenger.
Mm.
And when she sent it, she gave me her phone number. And I thought maybe her phone number had changed or something. So when I went to put the number in my phone, her name came up. But just to show how we rarely spoke, she thought maybe I didn't have her phone number. And once I gave her a call, it was a little later in the day. Because like I said, I was working on the previous book. And she told me, she said she was sitting in church because this was on a Sunday. And she said something came over. And she said God informed her that I wouldn't know what to do with the book, but just giving me the title. And she said it is called By Invitation. Oh, and I said, wow. I said, okay. So I made note of it. And I took that in such an amazing way because it was almost as if God was like saying, I've reached a level where he can use me now. Like all he has to do is give me the title and I'll run with it. Like you're ready now. You're ready to push forward and do greater work for me. So it was such a unique thing. And like I said, the title itself, even now, is unique in how, what does that actually mean by invitation? Oh, so I didn't have anything to apply to it. It wasn't something I came up with. So it was all coming from scratch.
Mm.
And, I just went with the flow and allowed the Holy Spirit to use me and give me the words to apply to it. And as time went by, I eventually put out the previous book, Chosen, and got that published. And then, as time went by, I started getting ideas of what the chapter could be, each chapter and what it could pertain to, dealing with an invitation.
Mm.
And before I knew it, I had completed an entire book. And, it was like, and the way the book ended, that was a sign to me that it was God along the whole process. God was involved because when I came to the end of the chapter, I wasn't
Mm.
sure that it was the end, but it was somehow it all came together and how it all just flowed so well. And it was like God had revealed to me, like, this is it. You did the book, and it's time to publish it. And next thing I know, I came out with this book that I had no resources on, but it was all spirit led and
Mm.
it flowed and went well, and I was happy to complete it.
For people who have not read this book by invitation only, can you give us a glimpse or like a little sneak peek of what they could expect about this story?
Definitely. This is
Correct.
because this isn't a
Right.
fiction book. This is a nonfiction. So it's actually what God revealed to me as I was writing is that he's
Mm,
showing us that he's always inviting us into receiving from him. Like he's
mm,
always giving us opportunities to experience him and do work for him. And in that sense, he's giving us invitations, and how I begin the book is talking about the invitation to testify.
mm,
We're always given the opportunity through our experiences to testify how God has been in our lives.
mm,
So, because a lot of people, they'll have things occur in their lives and they never speak on it. They never tell the next person how God has been in their life. So, when you go through things in life, don't always look at the challenges you face as a negative thing, but view it as an invitation
yeah,
where you're allowed to go to others and share how God was yet working in your life, even through the challenges.
absolutely.
Yeah. So and each chapter breaks down various invitations that God used. Like a chapter in the book I call the church's invitation.
Mm,
And I shared how, like in my community, I use that as an example how like you can find a church almost on every corner. And
mm,
you see a church here and there. And some people may look at that as like, why is there so many churches in one setting? But in reality, what the Holy Spirit was showing me is that seeing all those churches is basically just God trying to get your attention. If you're a person that not quickly drawn to God and want to seek more about Him, all these churches are constantly showing themselves and becoming an invitation to bring you closer to God, trying to get your attention to draw more and receive from Him. So
mm.
that was one of the things I share as far as when it comes to a church set.
Oh, wow.
That's very beautifully put.
Absolutely. I love your description of that. Thank you for telling
Thank
us
you.
a bit about the themes and subject lines in the book. And also, Nicholas, you have another book titled A Man's Appetite. And I must say that you
Yeah,
got a lovely title names for these books. They are so
yeah.
spiritual. They are so, it's like I'm in a church listening to Sunday sermon, of that nature. Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
love the title Man's Appetite, which also has a
Thank you.
unique blend of narrative and life lessons. I wanted to ask you, what was the core message you hope readers will take away from that book?
I had seriously pursued going into writing, so I wanted to my focus at that point was to make a book for women readers. So I made a book. The first book was titled White Collar Woman, which focused on a young, successful woman. At the time, I was doing like a drama fiction type setting when it comes to my writing. And I believe at that point, I didn't truly understand where God was taking me. So I was just going with the flow and writing fiction and
Mm,
creating more entertainment than more teaching. So at that point, I viewed that this would draw a person's attention because that title itself would stand out like a man's appetite, and people want to
mm.
dive deeper into it. And it really was just a continuation of a white collar woman, and just went a little bit more deeper into the story that I originally wrote.
It's definitely an intriguing title.
Yeah,
Your latest book, Hey Sinner, carries a deeply personal, redemptive message, as I understand it, highlighting themes of grace, identity, and spiritual restoration. What actually inspired you, Nick? Was it a message of hope, or feelings of disqualified by people, their past, or just exactly what inspired you to write this book?
it definitely is an area you're talking about, like for hope, and like regardless of the situation you're in and what
Mm,
you've been through in life, it was to show that we're all on the same platform. We're all on the same level. We've all sinned and come short of God's glory, which is what the Holy Word teaches us.
mm,
So, regardless of where you are in your life, just realize that we're all sinners and we're all given the same grace and salvation. Regardless of how long you've been in the church or if you've never been in the church. So that was the whole purpose of that title, was like, because I knew that would stand out as well. But then once you got a chance to crack into the book and see what it had to say, you will see that, hey, sinner was simply saying, hey, I'm just like you. We're all the same. and God loves us all the same. It's no different love from the person that's teaching from
Yeah.
a pulpit to a person that's out in the world and never visits a church. He
Hmm.
loves you and wants you to be his child just as well as the people that's in a church setting.
Hmm. That's an amazing one, really.
That's a
Thank you.
deep one too. I
Yes.
mean, I could only imagine it was difficult to write.
It was a nice flow. I wouldn't say difficult, but it was a nice flow to it once I got going. And like I said, I believe majority of my writings lately have been
Mm.
spirit led. So, I'm not sitting back trying to think of, working hard to come up with an idea for the book. It's normally just I
Yeah.
go with the flow. When I
Yep.
feel like this is a great part to go into the book, I'll start writing, and next thing you know, I got another chapter. So it's been a great flow. I enjoy it.
That's amazing to know. And I like you to raise the books to the camera.
I have my current book because I just received it. I got another book that's soon to come out, and this book is titled "The Jesus Norm,"
Mm.
and this focuses on how Jesus was always meant to be our normal way of living. And so I got that I can share that with you, and
Oh,
and
wow.
at the same time I can get by invitation only as well if you would like me to.
Well, I love the description
That,
of this. Quite beautiful.
Okay,
Great
thank you.
cover. I love the cavalry in there. The
even
Thank you.
at,
clouds, the
yeah.
lightning from the sky.
But even at that, the color resonates with passion.
Mm,
Cavalry.
I appreciate that. I always look forward to the responses what people think. Yeah.
Well, you know how colors just seem to emanate with certain words and stuff
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
You've got hues of yellow and red that blend together so majestically. And
Mm.
the interesting thing is I think of when, Jesus does come back and, he's coming down and stuff, and that's just such a beautiful image there. And it does
Wow.
seem very much passion and heartfelt.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so this will be the next book and it'll be coming out very soon.
That's amazing.
I'll look forward to that one.
Yeah, we look forward to that, really. We look forward
Thank
to
you.
that. And I wanted to ask you, Nicholas, what initially inspired you to start writing? How did you begin with this, creative process, this creative journey that, led you to
What
going from the first book to the second, to the third, to the fourth? How did it get started? When did you begin? I don't know. If you can run us through, that'll be
it
nice.
was it was always a passion that I had as a young child. I've shared it often that as a preteen, I always had a strong imagination. I always thought of the ideas and stories, and one day
Mm,
I considered trying it myself and putting it on paper. All the ideas I had coming to me. I
mm,
figured, why not putting it on paper and see what I can do with it? Can I actually create a full story? And I would say I was in my preteens, and I had my parents, they were at the home. It was later in the evening, and I had finally did a story. And one of the things I
mm,
shared is that, during that time frame, this was probably in the mid 90s. So,
mm,
around that time, horror was a big thing. You had the Freddy Kruegers and the Jasons, and
Mhm.
that was a big thing. So of course I was drawn to write what I was familiar with, what was the big craze at that time. So I did come up with my own horror story. And
mm.
I had all the blood and gore and everything that's going on in the story. So one of the first people I went to was my parents because I'm thinking, what do they think about my book? I want to see how they react to it. And
Wow.
or my story. I wouldn't say a book because it was just like maybe a two-page story I had written. So
Yeah.
I went to my mother first. I could still visually see it. My mother she was doing some things in the kitchen cleaning up, and I let her look over it, and the response I got was completely not what I expected. She was a little upset because she's thinking like my preteen son is up here writing horror stories and about killing. What is going on? Why is he writing this? And then when I took it to my father, he was kind of like he wasn't real happy about it, but he was like, "Okay, good job," because that's the type of father I have. He encourages anything we do as children. So he said good job, but it wasn't like, oh, I love this story, So the response wasn't what I expected. But one thing I learned from that, I was like, because of what I wrote, I got that response. It wasn't their taste of coffee, it wasn't what they would want to read, but it had enough impact that they gave a response that you would get. If
Yeah.
you don't like horror, you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
And so I was doing so. I had something to work with, and that was in my preteens. But I never really pursued writing again until I was like in my mid to late 20s.
Mm.
And by this time I was working as a security guard. So once again, I was placed in a setting where I had free time to just sit back and think. So once again, my mind is flowing and I'm getting
Mm.
imaginations and ideas. And I'm
Mm.
thinking, what if I try to write a story again? At the time, I viewed the majority of book readers as women. And I was surrounded by a lot of women, even on my job as a security guard. It was a lot of women that worked on the job. So one of the first things I did was try to complete a whole chapter. And I went around to the various coworkers and started sharing it with them. I wanted to see a response. And when I shared that first chapter, they all got excited. They was like, wow, I enjoyed it. So like, you should keep going. I
Wow.
think this is good. And, from there, I just kept writing until I was able to finish a book. And that was the first time I was excited. And it's been a journey ever since.
No,
Wow.
it's interesting that you say that your dad's encouragement kind of like fed that seed of, you know, encouraging you to pursue your writing. But it sounds like your books now don't just travel to the Christian genre and stuff, but they kind of hit topics that span topics of finance to faith to leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. I'm glad you said that because I did like dabble in the area of finance as well, and that has a unique story in itself because I was always good with numbers as a child.
Oh.
That was one of my strongest areas in school. So when I moved forward and got into college, that's what I went to school for. I eventually moved off and got into accounting and got a bachelor's in accounting.
Wow.
And being involved with that and dealing with numbers and coming up with the finances, and I figured I could write a story that taught people about finances, gave them a better understanding as far as managing your finances and getting out of debt. And that book as well had a great response, and I truly enjoyed that one. That was, I gained a lot from writing that book as well.
So you might
Mm.
have some sort of connection with a David Ramsey kind of approach.
Yeah,
You do a little bit of the faith and you do a little bit of the leadership and you
right.
kind of just throw it together, but all of it seems to encompass with a Christian
Mm.
viewpoint. Am I correct?
Yes,
Mm.
Okay.
definitely.
Wow. That must have been a lot, even. I can imagine how much longer it take you to be able to figure all of these things out and even write all of this book one after the other. How long does it take you to transition from one book to another? I think you've got like three titles already.
Actually, I have 17 published books so far. Yeah, so
Oh,
so it's and
that's impressive.
thank you. And to be honest, the flow is of writing now has, and that's why I keep going back to the spirit-led concept. I believe it's spirit-led because it's totally different from what I used to do when it came to writing. This journey has been so amazing, and I so it's been a flow lately. It hasn't been like, maybe a couple of books a year. It's been, like I say, maybe a book every 2 months, depending on, you know, on the passion and the desire to finish the book.
So I take it you're not a plotter, you're more of a pantser if you're Holy Spirit led.
That's what it has been lately. Yeah. Because like I said in the beginning, I was doing fiction stories. So I definitely would plot out, I have an idea where I want to take the story from chapter to chapter. But
Mm.
lately with the Christian literature, it's just been, it flows. I may not have anything I want to put down one day, and
Mm.
then I may experience something, or I may just I have time to be deeper in thought and think for a minute. And then, I get more ideas and I think to myself, oh, this would be great to go in the book. And next thing you know, I'm putting it on paper. Because I even shared that when I did the first book, the first book that I wrote in my Christian literature that I wanted to do for God was titled Marred Clay. And I shared that even within the book. I was like, it was so different how this book came together. And I said I didn't even do the preface of the book until like maybe 6 or 7 chapters into writing the book. And it was like just, yeah, I would definitely say a pantser at this point. Definitely been a pantser.
Interesting to know.
Very interesting. And just apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on? I know you've mentioned you've got like 17 published already. Yeah, but do you have another one
Yeah,
you're currently working on aside from the one you showed initially to the camera?
definitely. Prior to finishing up the Jesus Norm,
Yeah.
I had three other books that I had completed, and I hadn't came out with them yet. I was planning to come out with the book to follow Hey Sinner. And but what I wanted was my pastor to input some information of his own into the book. So I gave him the script to read over it and see what he wanted to add to the book. So while I was waiting to get a feedback from him, once again, like I said, it was almost like the Panther type situation you shared is where
Mm,
it started to flow, and now I wanted to do a book on the Jesus norm. So I had three books, the one shared with my pastor and two to follow. But
mm.
while I'm waiting on my pastor to do his part, I started writing again. And while still waiting on him to do everything he wants to do, I got another book that's coming out. So
Wow.
definitely, I got three books in the waiting for whenever it's time. So whenever it's time to do those next three, I have books in the waiting to bring out. Definitely.
Apart from what you've shared there that you've been currently working on, could you tell us what publishing is like for you as a published author?
I definitely say it's easier, as far as being self-published. When I did the first book, I went the whole, normal process where you're reaching out to publishers, you sending them letters and asking them to take on your book, and you're going to get rejections here and there, and so it's a long process as far as getting the publishing set up, as far as on that side of it, where you get the normal way of the traditional publishing.
Yeah.
And I eventually got connected with a publisher. There wasn't a big publisher, but I was able to get the first book put out by a publisher. So that
Mm,
was a huge accomplishment for me. But once I discovered that, I wouldn't have anything stopping me. I could put out books continuously. I can do it every 2 months if I wanted to,
yeah.
but with a publisher, they have a certain way they do things. They have limitations. They probably work with multiple authors, so they want to give this person some shine time, and then they come to you for another book. And so
Mm,
it's not a bad thing, when they give you access to more readers, but for the time being, I've been enjoying the whole self-publishing side of it. I've been enjoying
mm.
being able to share my information as often as I want and also create it how I want. I don't have the limitations that it comes with traditional publishing.
It's an amazing one, really. I love your take on that. Quite beautiful and quite awesome. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Yes.
sharing. And just in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of any of your amazing titles. On what platform are they available on for purchase?
I definitely have my own website, which is authormaze.com, Maze, authormaze.com. And you can absolutely find it on Amazon as well. Some of my books are available on Barnes and Noble, but all my books are available on Amazon. That's been one of the easiest platforms to get self-published work on. You don't have to, there's not a long, drawn out process of getting it published on that site. So definitely on Amazon, you can find all my work on there.
Hmm, that's interesting.
I think book titles are what sell a
Yeah,
book.
yeah,
And knowing your genre and knowing the direction you're headed, I mean, Mean's Appetite, Hey Sinner, I mean, those things definitely stand out for any reader that's looking for a Christian book,
yeah,
a solid Christian book.
definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank
Absolutely amazing. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Nicholas May's books directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles on his website and also on other platforms. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Nicholas, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It was great having this conversation with you around your beautiful titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Definitely. I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Nick, it was great to meet you. I
Definitely too.
appreciate it. And reach out to us
Okay.
anytime.
Yeah. Like I said, it's been flowing for a while, so I definitely have more work to share with you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
That
Thank
much.
you.